Books for Girls. Diary of a Girl Who Showed Them All. Adventure Stories for Kids. Written by Jeff Child. Narrated by John H. Feskins. Introduction. Jenny is a secretary. She is okay with her job, but when some of her colleagues ridicule her, she wants to stand up for herself and for all women. She accepts some of the challenges they give her, to be better at something than they are, and despite her failures, she shows that she has certain talents they don't, and a battle with some enemies proves that she has more to give than they thought. Listen about how this girl finds what she is good at and shuts her demeaning colleagues up. Chapter 1. Proving Myself. AMM Corporation, this is Jennifer speaking. How can I help you? This is what I said every day, about 100 times per day, maybe even more. I was a secretary, a good one. I was a multitasker, and I didn't hide it. When I applied for this job, they gave me a testing day. They observed me as I answered the phone, organized papers, and answered emails at the same time. I was like a centipede. I could do it all at once. "You're hired," they said after seeing me being busy. I was thrilled. I was incredibly happy. I knew I would do well at this company. However, what I didn't see coming, which is always the case, was that interacting with colleagues and coworkers would be one of the most important things. You see, there are a lot of people who do what they love, but hate their job because they can't get along with other employees. At the same time, there are those who don't perform their favorite tasks, but love the camaraderie at work, which makes all the difference to them. In my case, I was at a job with all men. It was a competitive company, and all they did was take risks, exchange stocks, and a lot of other complicated stuff. All they needed me for was to answer the phone and make appointments and such. I didn't know anything about the business, and sometimes I had the feeling they looked down on me for that reason. It all started on a Thursday. I would have the next day off, so my weekend would be long. It was afternoon, and one of those men, whom I suspected to be a big bully in high school when he was young, came over to my desk and told me to get him some hot chocolate. I am kind of busy right now," I said. "The machine is right over there." "I know," he said, "but I think you should get it. You don't do anything important here anyway, and my time is much more precious. Besides, you're a woman." I could not believe my ears. Suddenly, the rest of the world was gone from my concentration. My senses blocked out all other sounds, smells, and images. All I heard was, "You're a woman." I stood up and put the phone on hold. Then I looked him in the eyes and said, "Excuse me? I am a woman? What does that have to do with anything?" "Well, it's your job to get me what I want," the guy said. I swallowed some words I wanted to say to him and took a deep breath. This arrogant loser was going to get it. "Listen to me, demon," I said. "Damien," he said, correcting me. "Whatever. Perhaps if you wanted to lose some weight, you would drag your own fat body over to that machine and get yourself some toxic, sugary drink. But then again, I don't think you could resist the temptation of an addictive substance because you're just lazy. I hope you don't treat your wife the same way." "I'm not married," Damien said. "That doesn't surprise me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got work to do, things a multitasker like myself, a woman, is good at." "Oh, I acknowledge that," Damien insisted. "You women are good at those kinds of things." I was furious. This guy was so full of himself. He really believed that women were only good at certain things, and I was going to prove him wrong. "Name something men are generally better at than women, and I will defeat you," I said, being a little too confident. "Oh, there are so many things. There is math, sports, construction work, driving." "What? How would you—" "Never mind. I guess it's useless to convince you of anything. Name the time and the place, and I will be there." And then it happened. The matches had started. He contacted some of his colleagues, all men of course, who would come to watch me fail. Me and my big mouth. Before I knew it, a group of 5 guys came to my desk, including Damien, and demanded my attention. "Yes," I said sheepishly. "I brought some of my colleagues," Damien said. "If you want to back up what you said, then accept the challenges of these 4 guys. One of them is a math specialist. He does all the finances for our company. His name is Victor." I looked at the nerdy character in front of me and understood I was going to get smoked immediately. But I didn't know what to say. "Then we have Hakeem over here. He has played college basketball. He is challenging you to a basketball one-on-one match. That's Ivo. He works in construction. He says you won't last a day there. And then there is Carson. He is a driving instructor. You said you could beat all of us at what we're good at? Go ahead and show it. I am waiting. Do you accept these challenges?" I looked at them and sighed. "Sure, I do." "Good," Damien said. "Then I will see you here tomorrow." He left it at that, and I watched as he and his buddies left the room. I put my head into my hands. What did I get myself into? Chapter 2. Math. I was worried that night. When I went to bed, I knew I was going to fail. I wasn't an expert at any of those things. Math? Basketball? Construction work? Well, at least I could drive. That wouldn't be a problem, would it? I thought I would stand a chance at that, but then again, driving instructors are pretty strict, so even that would probably be difficult. When I arrived at the office the next day, Damien was standing there with Victor. They greeted me and went inside, beckoning me to follow. I knew I couldn't expect them to open the door for me and apply the ladies first rule, but oh well. After we sat down, Damien said, "You can still back off and take back what you said. Men are just better at math. It's a proven fact. So are you still in?" "Yes, I am," I said, hoping that I would get some things right. "Suit yourself," he said. "Victor?" "We are going to solve 200 math problems on the computer," Victor began. "Because it is a computer, we cannot cheat. You simply look at the problem and figure out the answer. It's multiple choice, so even if you have no clue what you're doing, you could still get some answers right by guessing, but your percentage would be low. So I encourage you to just use your brain and those math skills you claim to have. The problems are random, so there was no way for me to cheat by knowing the answers in advance. Are you ready?" Great, this guy was a total geek and was still full of himself. But what else was I going to do? I accepted the challenge, and we went to work. "Ready," I said. The first formula appeared in front of me. Was I supposed to solve this? Whoa, this was way above my head. I already knew that I was going to blow this. I remembered some stuff from high school, and that the teachers in my class always made it sound simpler than it seemed to me. I remembered some equations and tricks, but most of them had left my memory. I guess I'll just guess, I thought. Hopefully the answer was D, which was what I filled in. The whole test became multiple guess instead of multiple choice, because I didn't know what I was doing. In the end, I probably got a few questions right by actually knowing for sure what the answer was. When the test was over, the results were terrible. I answered 54 questions out of the 200 correctly. Victor, on the other hand, had a score of 187 out of 200. It was obvious that he was better at math. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Damien asked after seeing the results, crossing his arms and staring at me. "Pfft," I said. "Just because he is better at math doesn't mean all men are better at math." I could tell that he secretly agreed with my reasoning, but he still had to defend his ego. "Well, you said you could do better, and you didn't," was all he said. Then they both walked away. I lost. Chapter 3. Basketball. That same afternoon, we met at a little basketball court outside. The weather was great, and the sun was shining. It was a perfect day to shoot some hoops. That is, if you're good at it, which I wasn't. Again, I wondered why I hadn't just shut my big mouth when Damien challenged me, but I couldn't back out now. It was too late for that. I had to show them that I was at least willing to try it, and I also believed I had a chance of winning. And that's where I was wrong. Hakeem was there with Damien. The rules were simple. We didn't need explaining. When Damien tried to tell me how basketball worked, I told him I already knew that, because I had played some basketball in my childhood myself. Fine, he said. Good luck. You'll need it. We began to play. I had the ball and looked at the basket, too far away, especially with a 6 foot 6 inches tall guy in front of me holding up his arm. So I decided to dribble past him. Luckily, I was pretty quick, and I went up for the lay-in. Bang! I got blocked, and he even managed to go after the ball and keep it inside the court lines. Then he shot the three. Swoosh! The score was 3-0. I got the ball and tried to shoot, but I missed. Hakeem grabbed the rebound, went to the three-point line, and came back to dunk it over me. The score was 5-0. This guy was just too big and athletic. There was nothing I could do. He had probably been practicing every day as part of his routine. I didn't stand a chance. Do you think I made at least 2 points? I didn't. We went until 21, and it became exactly that, 21-0. Hakeem won, and my ego was broken again. He was just better than I was. Not too easy, is it? Damien said with a grin on his face. I looked at Hakeem. He didn't express any emotion. He just stood there as if nothing had happened. I figured he didn't care, and he didn't consider me a threat in the first place. He knew he was good at basketball, and probably didn't even think he'd lose. Well, he is so much taller than I am, I said in my defense. Oh, come on, Damien said. If you would have hit more shots, you totally would have beaten him. It's not all about being tall, you know that. Some of the world's best professional basketball players are as tall as you are. I still didn't think it was fair, I said, as I watched them walk off. Chapter 4. Construction. The next morning, we had agreed to give me a day at the construction site, just to know what it felt like. Ivo was there, and he made sure I wouldn't be able to take a break. He was wearing a dark sweater and had a stern look on his face. He greeted me and told me where to begin. At first, we just put some screws into a wooden board and attached some nails to a gutter, but then the heavy stuff arrived. Okay, Ivo said. This truck is full of cement materials and bricks. Whatever you do, don't hurt your back. We have tools for those kinds of things. But what you carry by yourself will be appreciated. It was exhausting. The other men were carrying large rocks and materials with their bare hands. I noticed that a lot of time I was just in the way, and that they had to wait for me to move or step aside before they could get the next rock. Stop, Ivo said after a while. I think it would be better if you worked somewhere else. Follow me. He led me to a part of the construction site that was farther away from where the men carried in heavy materials. He handed me a shovel and said, Start digging. Digging for what? I asked. Nothing in particular, he said. We just need a hole in the yard here. It should keep you busy for a while. I started digging. I went on and on for hours. I didn't like it because it hurt my back. I wasn't made for these kinds of tasks. I rather stayed inside at the computer or something, not outside performing all this physical labor. It was hard and exhausting. Towards the evening, as I was standing in the big hole I had dug so far, I suddenly heard a voice behind me. Not so easy, is it? Damien said mockingly. Well, I would like to see you digging for about 4 hours. It gets you pretty tired. No, not me. I would be okay with it because... Because what? I asked. Because you're a man? Get out of here. Such nonsense. You said it, not me, he said, and then he walked away. Oh, that arrogant, conceited, complacent jerk. I could have hit him with my shovel right there and then, but I knew that wouldn't help me get anywhere. If there was something I should be better at, it was controlling my emotions. I stopped digging. I figured I had lost this one too, since I was in the way of the construction workers and even had a hard time digging a hole. Ivo came and told me I did a good job. He paid me and let me go home. I knew he wasn't completely satisfied with my work, but at least he was a decent guy, not like that Victor or even Damien. I went home and dreaded the next day, which would probably be another challenge I couldn't overcome. Chapter 5. The Drive. It was the last day of the weekend, and I was about to compete with one of the best driving instructors in town. Carson and Damien saw me coming when they were at the giant parking lot. I looked at what they had done. Cones were everywhere, put down in a certain order to guide a circling and zigzagging car. "I'll go first," Carson said when I arrived. He got into a beige Volvo and started the engine. Then he took off. Damien was keeping track of his time. Carson swirled around every single cone with elegant and quick moves, not hitting any of them. Then he took a sharp turn, drove a little longer, and stopped next to us. 5 minutes and 34 seconds, Damien said, showing his stopwatch. "See if you can beat that." "And if I hit a cone?" I asked. "Then we'll add 20 seconds. "What? That much? You're kidding me," I said. "Hitting surrounding objects is a serious thing," Carson said. "It's not only about timing, but also about precision." I couldn't argue with him. He was the driving instructor, and not only did he know what he was talking about, but obviously he was very good at driving too. This wasn't going to be easy. I opened the car door and sat down behind the wheel. I hated myself for glancing at Damien and seeing an evil smirk on his face. Boy, was I going to prove him wrong. 3, 2, 1, he said. "Go!" I hit the gas pedal and swerved around some of the cones, but this car wasn't that easy to control. I have to admit that I was more used to my Chevrolet, my own car, and that the wheel in this one was annoying. And even though it wasn't fair that I was unfamiliar with this car and Carson wasn't, I still beat myself up for knocking over several cones and making a few wrong moves. It took way longer than Carson's perfect little drive, and when I arrived at the two men, I looked back and noticed I had knocked over more than 10 cones. Damien looked at his stopwatch and laughed. 13 minutes and 55 seconds, he said. I was discouraged. "Fine, you win," I said as I shook Carson's hand. Then I walked away. "I told you the men were better at driving," I heard Damien shout in the distance. Again, I didn't think it was fair, and just that this trained driving instructor was better than I was didn't necessarily have anything to do with our genders. It was stupid. Chapter 6. Dance Club. They were laughing at me, all of them. They worked at the same company, and still they thought they were better than I was, and some of them attributed their skills to the fact that they were men. How ridiculous! Oh well, if they wanted to play that game, then bring it on. I had some tricks up my sleeve too, and I knew how to use my femininity to my advantage. I saw them at work, and I put the phone on hold. For this, I would take a small break. It was worth it. "Hey guys," I said as they walked in. The 5 of them turned their heads and looked at me. "I have an idea," I said. "Do you like dancing?" They all shook their heads. None of them were into that stuff. Yes! I finally found something I was probably better at. "Then I challenge you to a dancing contest tonight at the Jumper, which is the nightclub on the other side of town." "We know where it is," Damien said. "But why would we go along with such a dumb challenge?" I laughed. The 5 of you have become experts at math, basketball, construction work, and driving, but I bet you $100 that you cannot beat me at dancing." "How do you decide who is better, though?" Hakeem asked. "Oh, they have judges there. Don't worry. I've been there enough to know that they always have a challenge night with experienced judges. So what do you say, boys? Will you do it, or are you too scared?" "We are not scared," Damien said, as he put his hands in his side and lifted up his head. "That's right," Victor said. "We'll take the challenge." "Good," I said. "Then I will see you there at 9. Have fun today, boys." I was in my element. I answered every phone call with a bigger smile that day. By the way, did I mention I had been a street dancing champion in college? I was the best. I had often danced at the club and showed off. People loved me there. And even though I wasn't in a solid relationship at the moment, I knew a lot of guys at the club who were staring at me whenever I danced. That night I showed up at the disco. I didn't dress up in a provocative way, but attractive enough to be noticed. I had put on some extra makeup and came with full confidence. The men, not so much. I sensed that they weren't convinced of their own dancing skills, and I was loving it. Some of their outfits looked sloppy and baggy. "Evening, boys," I said. "Shall we?" We went inside and danced around a little bit. I held back because the contest hadn't started yet. Another 20 minutes and then the fun could begin. I went to the table of the judges and signed the 6 of us up. And then it started. The crowd had formed a circle. The judges announced the contestants. "Our first dancer is Victor," they shouted through the microphone. Victor came forward. He was insecure and shy. His moves were stiff, worse than a broken robot. He tried to do a few dance moves, but they all looked rusty. People snickered. They thought he was a terrible dancer. It was obvious. The judges held up their numbers. A 6, a 5, a 4, and a 2 out of 10. Horrible. Next was Damien. He tried hard because he had such a big ego. However, the more he tried, the more ridiculous he looked. The rolls of fat underneath his shirt were showing, and he was sweating like a pig. One time he even fell over. When he was done, the judges rolled their eyes and gave him an even lower grade than Victor. Hakeem was the next contestant. I have to admit that he wasn't all bad. His athletic body helped him make a few moves that almost impressed some of the ladies, and the judges gave him an average of 6.8. Not bad. Ivo, the construction worker, just looked weird. He was making an attempt to breakdance, but in the meantime he hurt his back and had to leave the dance floor a little earlier. Disqualified. Ha! My chances became bigger. The last one before me was Carson. He did these strange little hops and tried moves that only look good when a girl does it, if you know what I mean. People were a little turned off by it and looked in disgust as the judges tried to think of what to say about it. His average was a 5.3. Not impressive, and that's an understatement. And then it was my turn. The music started. I was into it. I went all crazy with all the moves I had learned in the previous years. I shook my hips and threw my hair into the air. As I kept doing fancy, cool street moves, I noticed the crowd got into it. After a while, everybody was clapping and cheering me on. My shoulders, my waist, everything swung to the music perfectly. It all came naturally. When I was done, I ducked and ended with a freeze, with some attitude. The judges didn't have to think hard about this one. I got all 9s and 10s. I walked towards the 5 men who had been mocking me in the previous days and said, "You know what the sad thing is, boys? I won't even ascribe my glorious victory to the fact that I am a woman. Sure, no man can move their hips and shake their torso or hair in the same way a young lady does, but I have to admit that it was all just because guess what? Practiced. It wasn't because I am a woman. So maybe you should think about that tonight when you try to build up your egos again." They didn't say anything back. I blew them a kiss and left the club with flair. They stared at me. "I have to admit, she is kind of attractive when she is dancing," Victor said. "Oh, shut up," Damien said. "Let's get out of here." Chapter 7. Negotiation. The next day I showed up at work with a smile, but my smile soon disappeared when I heard an awful sound. I turned around the corner and saw some of my coworkers lined up against the glass of the next office room. "What are you all looking at?" I asked. "What's happening?" "The CEO's daughter," one of them said. "She went nuts. Look." The sound that threw me off guard was the screaming of a 7-year-old girl who was throwing a tantrum in the office. Some things had been knocked off the desks, and she was stomping and clenching her fists, banging them on the office carpet. "She went berserk," Ivo said. "I don't understand, but her father isn't here and we don't know how to deal with it." "I tried to give her candy," Hakeem said, "but she wouldn't even accept that. What kid doesn't want candy?" "I told her that her dad would be very angry at her if he saw this," Damien said. "It didn't help." I chuckled. Of course that didn't help. These guys didn't know what they were doing. 10 men were afraid of a little girl. That was a first. Her tantrum was so wild and destructive that none of them had a clue of how to deal with her. Punishments, bribery. This girl just needed some empathy. I looked at my colleagues and asked, "Do you mind if I try?" They all looked at me and said, "By all means, if you think you can do better, go ahead." When I opened the door, my colleagues all backed off a little, fearing what seemed to be a terrible brat in the office room. They watched as I approached the little girl and asked what was wrong. When she saw me, she suddenly stopped screaming and banging her fists. This was my one chance. "Please tell me," I said in a soft voice. "I won't punish you for it. You can tell me anything. What can I do for you?" I just," she started. "Yes, go ahead." "I just want my daddy. He said he wouldn't leave me, and now he dumped me into this boring office. He is always busy." "Oh, is it that?" I asked, as I sat next to her on the floor and put my arm around her. She leaned against me and stopped crying. There, just calm down," I said. "It's okay. I understand that you want him back and that he is taking way too long. Sometimes I, too, think that he works too hard. Hey, I have an idea. How about you help me answer the phone and organize my desk? Then you can be my little helper." She sobbed and thought about it. "Okay," she said quietly. "And you know what?" I continued. "We can have some fun. The office chairs have wheels. I can push you around on them. We can take a look at some of my family pictures on the computer, and you can use some of my printing paper to make a drawing. How does that sound?" "I guess that could be fun," she admitted. "What's your name?" I asked. "Eveline," she said. "That's a beautiful name. My name is Jessica, but you can call me Jess." I saw a glimmer in her eyes. She got excited about playing around in my office, and I didn't even have to promise her a treat. All she needed, I figured, was a listening ear, a hug, and maybe even a solution, but none of those insensitive guys at the window had thought of that. I grabbed her hand and took her to my office. When I opened the door and let her walk through, I looked at Damien and a few of the others and stuck out my tongue as if to say, "See, there are some things women can do better than men." I didn't say it because I wasn't going to openly generalize like that, but I have to admit that I thought it, and I think they knew it too. Eveline played in my office room that day. It was a lot of fun. We had a fake tea party, threw pieces of paper at each other, and did funny voices on the phone when customers couldn't hear us when being put on hold. When her dad came back, he thanked me elaborately and gave me a financial bonus. It was one of the best days at work I had had so far. Chapter 8. Take That. The days after that went smoothly. Nobody bothered me anymore. They knew I possessed qualities that they didn't, and whether or not that was because I was a woman, I didn't care. I showed them I was good at something. But about a week later, something occurred that nobody had expected. The siren went off. It was audible throughout the city. A voice was heard through some speakers in the streets. We all tuned in and listened to what it had to say. "Ladies and gentlemen of the city, we have some terrible news. Zombies have entered the premises. Stay in your homes and buildings and hide. The authorities will do all in their power to eliminate the threat as soon as possible. Thank you for your cooperation." "Everybody hide underneath your desks," my employer encouraged his staff. We did what we were told. I noticed all my coworkers hide, but I knew where to find a weapon just in case. Since it wasn't all safe, I was going to make sure nothing would happen to us. I knew a lot of people who had died when hiding from the zombies. They always came unexpectedly, and then the horde would just sweep through the city and try to kill whomever would be in their path. They never stayed for long, but they did a lot of damage every time they showed up. But I was ready, because I had a gigantic sword in my hands. Who would have a sword in their office, you ask? Well, I did, because these were some of my other hidden talents, sword fighting and fencing. I had a dad who was in the army. He had taught me to shoot guns and use swords. It was quiet, and it stayed quiet for a long time. We heard some noises from the city, but those were all outside the walls of our office building. The zombies were in the city, and they were roaming the empty streets. Usually they wouldn't enter a lot of homes and buildings, but it wasn't impossible for them to do so. And it didn't take long before they just happened to break into our building. Crack, clash, cling, clang. They busted through the glass of our lobby and started to look for possible victims. The CEO of our company got up and yelled, "Change of plans! Everybody get to their guns, now!" As fast as they could, the employees in the building ran towards the gun racks and armed themselves with machine guns and shotguns. The zombies came closer. The employees were lined up, ready to follow their employer's orders. "Ready?" he said. "Fire!" Boom! Boom! Tak-a-dak-a-dak! The guns were firing hundreds of bullets at the zombies. Some of the zombies fell over and got back up again. Others just jerked a little at the impact of the bullets, but kept walking forward. "Keep firing!" the CEO yelled. It was useless. The zombies were immune to bullets. It didn't do anything to them. And although it was holding them back, the employees were just stalling by shooting them and postponing their own deaths. But then I ran downstairs and jumped behind the employees. "Cease fire!" I yelled. They all looked at me for a second. "Don't you see? You can't kill them this way," I said. "But what are we going to do then?" my boss asked. "Haven't you heard?" I asked. "There is only one way to kill zombies, by chopping off their heads." I didn't want to waste any more words on explaining myself. I was a little surprised they even tried to use guns against these zombies. I had always learned that you could only use swords, axes, pickaxes, or other sharp objects against them. And I was right. My father had taught me well. I dashed forward and swung my sword into the direction of one of the zombies. Tsack! I chopped his head off in one move. I didn't look back to see my colleagues' reactions. I just kept slashing the zombies with my awesome blade. Head after head fell on the floor of our lobby. It was a massacre. My coworkers backed off a little and let me do my thing. They couldn't believe someone like me was capable of such actions and skills. So far, they always looked down on me, thinking that I was this shy, weak person. Imagine what was going through their heads now. A few dozen men grouped together, watching a woman kill countless zombies in front of them by chopping their heads off. It was priceless. When I was done and there were no more zombies in our area, I leaned on my sword, a little tired but pretending to be just fine. I smirked and saw their faces glowing with astonishment. They were speechless. I stopped leaning on my sword and picked it up. With the blood dripping from the end of the blade, I put it on my shoulder and walked past them. "Excuse me, boys," I said. "I still have some paperwork to do." I don't think I have to tell you that I got a raise that very same day, and that all the men at the office building were more respectful towards me after that incredible display of courage and fighting skills. I don't think I have to tell you that men and women have different abilities, but that the possibilities are almost endless, and that you never have to worry about someone else being a sexist about it. And I don't think I have to tell you that I was asked on dates every weekend after that, either by men working at the company or by other men who heard about me. It was a lot of fun being so popular. And last but not least, I don't think I have to tell you that you just have to believe in yourself. That you don't have to be the best at everything, but that you should find what you have a natural talent for and continue to make that grow. That's what I did. The end. This has been Book for Girls, Diary of a Girl Who Showed Them All, Adventure Stories for Kids. Written by Jeff Child. Narrated by John H. Feskins. Copyright 2017 by Jeff Child. Production copyright 2017 by Jeff Child.